it's okay not to be okay. And the more that we tell people that that's okay and that they say it and that they believe it, and to give yourself grace because life is freaking hard.
Welcome to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denisa Tova. And today I'm sitting down with what a, what a duo, what a dynamic duo. Kristen Holstrom and Samantha McBride. They're powerhouse attorneys behind the #1 legal talk show actually on Go Country 105 FM, known as the Custody Queens. And they have decades of experience in family law, but they are truly dynamic women, great personalities, great energy. We just had a great discussion. You're in for a treat. So, Kristen and Samantha, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having us, Denisa. We've been super excited to be here and we've been following your podcast and your journey for a while. And, we love the female empowerment behind what you're doing. And, we're just very honored to be here.
Very excited.
Likewise, likewise. We've never met as an FYI, so I love this because it sort of gives you like a clean slate and for me to have an opportunity to get to know you. But the energy is just it's phenomenal. So let's start. Let's go back. Let's go way back. Take me back to your teenage years. What were you guys like?
I personally was pretty shy, surprisingly. I'm a very loud and outgoing person if you get to know me, but I was pretty shy growing up, played a lot of soccer, come from a pretty simple background. I know Kristen also played soccer, so we shared that and kind of became fast friends when we first met.
Yeah, I was not shy. Shocking. I was kind of like a workhorse at a very young age. I started working for my dad in his law firm when I was about 15 years old, typing envelopes with a typewriter and cleaning bathrooms and just kind of, earning an extra dollar here and there in between soccer games on the weekends and after school. And I would have to go with him to the office. But I played soccer probably 5, 6 days a week. And then I was doing school, but I was the oldest of four. So I was just a workhorse. But I like to say that Sam and I were probably both very, very good kids.
Hmm. So, I'm curious, when you go back to being, I don't know, 8, maybe 10, if you were to look back, was there an experience or moment that sort of stands out for either one of you and and the feeling attached to it? And then when you sort of transport yourself forward to what you're doing today, does what you're doing today, what could be with the show, your work, are there times when you feeling, that moment? Like for an example, I mean, I had a guest and she sang with a brush and pretended she was on stage on Broadway, and it was actually family law judge. And today, when she's in a courtroom, she's like, I have that same feeling. This is certainly not a Broadway, but it's just sort of, it fills me up. Can you see a connection?
Yeah, definitely for me, just even being a shy kid, I know I'm not standing up right now, but I was 6 foot at 13. So I got teased a lot as a kid. And I think that, I don't know that there was a specific moment, but more like you were saying, a feeling where kind of, growing up's tough. Kids can be tough. And, I did have some good friends growing up and things like that, but you kind of start building this feeling that people are bullying you or sort of being unfair to you. And I think not necessarily intentionally, but as that translates to my present, as an advocate, an attorney, and a litigator, I do find myself sort of with a bigger heart and a more protective heart for my clients. And I think it brings that sort of empathy into it in general.
Yeah, I kind of similar with Sam. I don't know that there was a moment where I was like, family law, is what I want to do. I don't know that many people wake up and or at least at 8, 9 years old and have the vision of being a family law litigator. But I've been very empathetic from a very, very young age. I have always been one to speak up for the little people, for lack of better words, or for people that may not have the ability to advocate for themselves. I often get myself in situations where I get no benefit out of speaking and fighting for people for something that has nothing to do with me. It happens to me a lot, but being on boards and being in a lot of management groups it's just something I've always been passionate about. And I remember probably right around the age you were describing, which is my daughter's age, she's 10. And I remember I had been picked for like an all-star team for soccer. And I remember telling the coach, why don't pick me so and so could, have an opportunity, because there will be many more opportunities for me. And that was just organic. And I don't know why I remember that, but that is kind of just who I am. Like, I knew that would be probably an opportunity for me to happen, many years down the road. And that's something that my family is very big on, is creating those opportunities for people that may not be able to create them for themselves. And that's something that I try to instill in my kids every single day, is don't just think about yourself. Think about your neighbor. Think about, the kid at the lunch table that may not have the best home life, or may not have lunch money today, or may have just had a rough night's sleep, and try to speak for the people that may not have the ability to do it for themselves. And I think that's one of the things that makes me a pretty good lawyer, is I have no problem rolling around in the mud and taking an emotional beating myself.
See, there's that connection right there. So it almost feels like you are, there's like a alliance, or sort of when you can find the connection, because you can go and have a job, and many people are unhappy with what they do, I think, because they're missing that connection. But when you can go back to that moment, you don't know what it is that you will be doing, how you will be earning a living, but finding that spark, whatever it is, and then being passionate about that, that's I think that's great. So you're both family law attorneys. How did you make a decision, or what was that journey that sort of impacted, who choosing that profession?
So my dad started the main firm, Holstrom Block and Park. He started that. It was actually him. He was just a solo practitioner. I was, I think, 8 or 9 when he graduated law school. It was his second career. He kind of just went back to law school to educate himself. He didn't even really have a plan to be a litigator, and he actually was working in computer sales at the time, and was making very good money in the 80s for his age. And during some financial crisis back in the 80s, his company went bankrupt, and it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I actually have to, follow through with this career. And he always tells me he got into food law, which is, you do whatever case comes in the door to put food on the table. And he had 3 kids at the time. And he started taking a couple, civil cases and a couple divorce cases, mostly helping people out, or so you think. And then he actually did well in a couple divorce cases, and there was a colleague of his that was transitioning into a judge, and she had asked him to take over her practice. And that was how Law Offices of Dane Holstrom was started. And I think, like I said, I was 10 at the time. And then I went, from college to law school, and I worked for him full time during the day. And then I went to law school at night, and then I worked as a law clerk, and then it just kind of naturally fell in the progression. And then about 5 years ago, Sam and I were working on a very complex and just kind of nasty family law case at the time. And I remember clear as day, the day that Custody Queens came alive, and my intake team there was a PC prospective client calling, and they wanted a consult. And it was a very interesting case. This person engaged in infantilism, and it wasn't necessarily for a medical issue. And the PC team didn't know if I was willing to take it at the time. I had a pretty big caseload, and I said, I'm curious, I'll take it. And I remember coming out of the consult thinking, what am I, the fucking custody queen?
Yeah.
And literally the next day I said, Sam, are you ready to do this? We're the custody queens. And that truly is how it was born. And I think within a week we had a website. I think the next week Dr. Phil was calling to see if, we could send in a tape and provide some feedback. And we were like, hey, maybe we're onto something. But we had just made it our vision to be different, to be relatable, not to be stuffy corporate attorneys that were here just to, charge $500 an hour, but to relate to people going through a dark time and just to humanize this whole journey. It's just because it's a new transition, it's not bad. It's not bad. And we really tried to pride ourselves on educating people about this process and not just checking boxes and collecting dollars. That's not who we are. Sam, any?
Yeah,
You
I
wanna add?
mean, yeah, so for me, my sort of background experience, I kind of say I became a family law litigator on accident, but it's the best thing that ever happened to me. So I come from a family of quite a few people that went to law school, do criminal law. My grandpa was a criminal judge for years and years, and I kind of went to law school not knowing what I wanted to do. Tried a little criminal law, it wasn't for me. And then I met Kristen. Believe it or not, I actually applied to work for Kristen when I think it was on Craigslist when I was fresh out of law school.
Legal
And she
assistant position, I think.
yeah, she hired me because I played soccer, not because I had any legal experience, and we became fast friends. But I think over the years, we started kind of realizing or recognizing about ourselves that, family law is historically, a lot of people say, you don't want to be a family law attorney and things like that. But Kristen and I found ourselves in a position where we're both actively in family law, and we're both quite passionate. So we started realizing, like, especially when it comes to custody and visitation, there's a lot of basic rules, but there's a lot of room for creativity and education in the system. So many of us have a friend, mom, sister, aunt, neighbor that has gone through the family law process with, maybe potentially not a great feeling leaving it. And so Kristen and I started realizing a lot of this is about getting your clients to have the meaningful education to make the meaningful decisions. And we just started getting a little better at it, where we realized maybe not all of this is written in black letter family law code book, but there's some stuff that we can do. And so Kristen's exactly right. At some point noticed we started kind of focusing on the custody cases, and Kristen just turns around and is like, we're the fucking custody queens. And we're like, okay. And I remember her dad laughed at us, but we kept pushing forward, and we're here today.
Yeah, we had a lot of naysayers and a lot of people making fun of us. And now we have a lot of people getting letters from our attorneys trying to copy us. I'm sure you have similar experiences, but it's so much about what we do is being an attorney is so not a one size fits all thing. And I cannot even tell you how many times we go to court and people are meeting their client for the first time and calling out their name in a hallway and going over boilerplate orders without even knowing, what does that family do for the holidays? Do they do something special? Do they alternate days? Do they celebrate any other holidays throughout the year that may not be quote unquote a government holiday? What is important to this family? Do the kids play high level sports? Are we going to have to deviate from the norm? But so many of these attorneys look at the file the night before, the morning of, check boxes, and literally are calling their name, Laura, down the hallway. And it just makes me cringe, because it's like people are cashing out retirements and, collecting money from family and friends to pay for this. And there's nothing human about that approach. And so we made it our mission to change it.
I love it. I love what you said about humanizing it, because there's a sense of shame when you're going through it. And then when you add basically this feeling of I'm losing control, safety, security, it doesn't matter if you're the providing parent, the stay-at-home parent. It's all people sort of act from the shadow side. I mean, I've been through that transition, and there's no shame in it. And I think the more you demystify the process, normalize and humanize, the faster the family begins to heal.
100%.
And we're all conflict. That's just a normal way of life, and there's a healthy conflict, and then being able to help people navigate through it. And you don't have to. And I guess that is my question: is you don't have to immerse yourself in their emotional stuff. Now, how do you deal with that? Where do you draw the line? If, let's say, you do have a client who's very, very, very emotional, right? How do you do that so that you're not getting sucked into it, but you're empathetic?
Well,
I
go ahead,
Sam.
Kristen.
No, I was gonna say, I'll let you take it. One of my very first questions in the intake is, do you have a therapist?
Oh, good.
And if it is no, it is get one.
Hmm.
I'm not taking this case unless you get one. Because Sam or I are not licensed therapists, and we are very expensive to be unlicensed therapists. And I cannot represent someone that is relying on me or Sam to give them emotional guidance, because that's not what you're hiring me to do. And that's not what I'm best at. My bedside manner is not as good as Sam's, you know? But that is one of my absolute, and I go to therapy. I've been in therapy for 15, 20 years. I'm a huge fan of therapy, whether it's couples therapy, self-therapy, reunification therapy, kids therapy. Everybody should be in therapy. Therapists should have therapists. But that is literally one of my first questions.
Love it.
Yeah, and I think for me, and I agree with everything Kristen said, but I think for me at some point, the way that I sort of address if a client is highly emotional or things like that is, of course, validating their feelings. I mean, it's understandable. We go to court 15, 20 minutes, maybe a couple trial days here and there over the course of potentially several years, and then you have to live your life in between that. And so, of course, it's going to have an effect on everyone. But what I typically say is, look, you are using me as a tool to help advocate and navigate your way through the legal process. And so I'm not effective if I go down that hole with you. And so, like Kristen said, you need your support, your family, your friends, mental health help, you know, and all of those things kind of encompass how to get you through it. But I'm best when I keep myself neutral, because I can then look at your facts objectively and say, hey, look, I know this is really emotional, but these are your facts and this is what the law says. And so here's the way we can take your case. Here's what those potentials look like. And that, I think, sort of a lot of times helps people, because a lot of the emotions, not all of them, but a lot of them are wrapped up in the confusion of the process. They don't know what's happening. Some judges making a 5-second decision regarding their life, and they're very confused and they don't know what to expect. So a lot of times managing those expectations and kind of educating about the process, I think, is very helpful, in addition to obviously understanding that we can't, you know, fill everyone's cup in every way.
No, I think you're
Yeah,
right.
and it does take a few years. You know, I remember early in my career, Sam and I were just talking about this morning, and I'd wake up at 1, 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and you know, I was a new mom, and so things kind of hit a little bit harder when you have a baby, and you're like, oh, I couldn't imagine not seeing my baby. But being into the game, you know, close to 15 years now, and Sam and I are both specialists. I have to remember that I didn't make these choices. This is not my life. And this person is hiring us at, you know, one of their darkest times to help give them the information to move on to the next phase. And I try to tell my clients, the sooner we can get over the resentment and sooner we can get over the hate and the anger and all of the emotions, and they are valid. And it does take a period, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I understand that it's going to take that period, but the sooner we can get past that, the sooner that everyone's going to be thriving, especially the kids. And the kids, in my opinion, are always the most important, more so than any other asset or property. Those are the most important issues in any case, in my opinion.
So you're obviously very good friends. How do you handle disagreements?
With each other?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be okay. So here's the rundown. Kristen, you tell me if I'm wrong. Kristen and I actually don't fight that much. I know that might seem, but we are like sisters, and we live most of our, like, we spend more time with each other than our significant others. So, I mean, we kind of know everything about each other. And I think that we're, you know, very similar in a lot of ways and very different. Me personally, if I'm pissed off or upset or whatever, you're going to see it on my face. And Kristen always jokes she could see that a mile away, and she'll just give me the time that I need. And so normally we're fine. You know, and vice versa too. It's like we kind of get it. We're in an industry where everyone, you have to think most of the people we deal with on a day-to-day basis are people that are going through the worst times in their life. And in essence, we're in Groundhog's Day. It happens Monday through Friday and day in and day out. So we kind of navigate I think, that process well by leaning on all of our colleagues and peers and each other to get through that, because we just kind of don't have enough time to really go at it with each other. I mean, if you took everything away, maybe we would, but that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I would say in a decade, Sam and I maybe had 5 like meaningful disagreements, maybe. And I would say all 5 of those had nothing to do with actual disagreements of like case law or positions
Yeah.
we took on a case. And sometimes we don't necessarily agree initially on a strategy of a case, but then we talk it out and one of us will say, no, you're right. I think that's a better approach. I'm more slinging mud, and I'm more willing to take risks, and Sam is definitely more the voice of reason. And so usually we'll meet in the middle. But usually any time that we even butt heads, I wouldn't even really say they're disagreements. I think we've had probably 2 disagreements. I think we went without talking like a day and a half one time, and neither one of us could stand it. Um, but I would say that anytime that we get into a place where we're not 100% aligned, it's the stresses of life. It's outside factors. It's not getting enough sleep. It's clients, it's trials, it's cases, it's, just stress. It's family. It's just life. And we're kind of like the one person that we can take it out on each other. I joke, that she's kind of like my husband that, hey, you're one of the ones closest to me. And if I'm tired and I'm cranky, you might get it from me. But
Yeah,
I
and I
can
mean,
walk in Sam's office, I can look at her and I can, "Hey, not today." I
yeah,
look,
I have a full sentence on my face. If I'm not todaying, you'll know.
I don't even have to ask, like, so I'll say like, hey, you want to get lunch? Okay, see you tomorrow. And then I'm like, she's stressed. And she can do the same thing with me.
Hmm. So if you couldn't practice law, what would you guys do?
That's a great question. I think if I couldn't practice law, I think it would be something law ancillary, kind of the branch that we've been going with Custody Queens and the podcasting and things like that. I think, I know I've kind of mentioned this a couple of times, but the common theme of Custody Queens is really like educating people regarding and taking away that, oh, it's so scary to go to court, and all lawyer things are scary. And so for me, I find great joy in being able to normalize the process for people. And so I think it would be something like that. Maybe a professor I would love to be a professor, something like that. That sounds a little more
Sam's alley.
chill, but I think Kristen and I we're addicted to the family law game at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 things and they're kind of vastly different, so it'd be funny. I am obsessed with like the CIA, military.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with the whole process, operators, um, like kind of like the double life. Like I feel like I would be pretty good at that. I can be very relatable in different situations. So I feel like I could be that really badass boss lady in the CIA. And I also think I would be a phenomenal like sports agent. I actually think that was probably my true like calling. I have 2 kids that play very high level soccer and are phenomenal athletes for a young age. And I will be able to put together a top team of like 10 players, some of the best players in the country, and everyone jokes, you should have been a sports agent. I'm like, I know. In my spare time, maybe I'll pick up this gig, and they're like, oh, your second career. But I just love working with people and bringing people together and finding who needs what. What referral do you need? How can I get you this? And it was something I actually started local in our community before COVID, was bringing all the professionals together and setting up like a big dinner, and not just family law attorneys, different attorneys of all different areas, quadro attorneys, business attorneys, corporate attorneys, because when you're setting up an LLC and a formation, and then I also need a copyright and a patent attorney and a trademark, and then I need a podcast producer. So I really enjoy bringing people together and helping entrepreneurs come together and put teams together. It's something I really enjoy.
Yeah, you help them help yourself. That's interesting. Now obviously life's also not just about ups and it's about downs. Could you share about any losses, setbacks, and how you navigated through it?
Yeah, I've actually been through, I I turned 44 over the years. I had my last baby, I was 40, and I had him in April of 2020, the heart of the shutdown.
Mm.
And I had postpartum pretty bad, and I didn't have it for my first two, so it took me a hot minute to realize, and I was very much struggling with not having my. I'm very addicted to schedule. I'm a workaholic, and I was forced to, we were doing hearings from the phone and it was crazy. I wasn't sleeping. I was, had a baby on my lap trying to do a hearing. We didn't even have Zoom in some of the courtrooms. It was crazy. 6 months go by, life's starting to get a little bit normal, and I find myself crying every day. And I'm like, this is something is not really right, but I didn't really want to admit that something was wrong. And and so finally, I went into a psychiatrist, and it was like, you're dealing with postpartum. You're also dealing with some, depression, and which didn't surprise me. But then I also went and had my hormones checked, and lo and behold, I had some pretty significant issues with my hormones, going into the perimenopause process. And a year and a half ago, I started hormone replacement therapy. And for anyone listening, I cannot tell you what a game changer that was. And it's another thing that might be a little taboo and a little controversial, and people don't want to talk about postpartum and depression and mental health and hormone replacement therapy. But it not only did it save my marriage, it saved my sanity. I got to a place where I just wanted to sleep. I just wanted to cry. I wasn't present in my family with my kids. I was doing work, but I was going through the motions. I didn't enjoy it. And a year and a half later, I am a completely different person. I couldn't imagine going back to that person. So life is full of dark moments. You have to ride the waves, and it's not about being happy every day. It's learning and having the tools to ride the dark times, and being okay to say, I'm not okay today, but I'm going to be okay in a couple days.
Yeah, I love that, Kristen. And I agree. I mean, I don't think I've been very thankful not to have any substantial tragedy in my life. And I'm so grateful for that. But I am a hot mess. And there's always a new chapter of my life where something's happened. And, for example, when I was going through law school, my parents of 30 years got a divorce, and I was smack in the middle of it before family law was ever even a thought, and learning to navigate that and kind of seeing what it's like to have two different families and everyone's emotions and managing that. That was a big time for me. But I've just sort of noticed over the years, it's like every year, there's something different that's happening. I mean, this kind of sounds silly, but I know, remember, Kristen, there was for 5 months, it's like I couldn't not get a flat tire. I got like 5 flat tires in 5 months, and it's just, it kind of growing up and realizing the ebb and flow of setbacks for me has turned into just kind of accepting that life happens. It's going to happen. My car's going to break down. I'm going to have to move. I'm going to get heartbroken, which has, happened to me more than a couple of times. But it's kind of humbled me in a way, because I feel that I'm a lot more empathetic to other people when they're going through stuff. I find myself really kind of tapping into that and enjoying that I am, and just being hopeful sort of for the future. So I kind of feel like your scars they're terrible and you don't wish them on anyone, but they're what make you you, and they're what kind of help you grow.
My therapist told me about, gosh, when I started seeing her, I think I was in college. I would deal with like situational depression here and there. And honestly, recognizing it is half the battle. And then it's not a big deal. It's the, oh, I don't want to know what's going on. I'm scared. Once you have the information and the knowledge, it's so much better. But she told me, and she's since passed, and it was like losing a family member. But she said to me, Kristen, this too shall pass. And that is something I tell my clients pretty much every day. I use that line to either an employee, a colleague, or a client. And I just say, this too shall pass. It may not feel like it, and the storm feels like it's pounding pretty bad. And even personally, I go through it, and I have to remind myself, this too shall pass.
Yeah, it's just a temporary, but thank you, both of you, for sharing that. I'm an open book, and from there's just that has been, I think I struggled, and I've had a range of things, but I struggled when I did not give it a name when I was not ready to face it. When I finally released it, whether it was, eating disorder, whether I mean I came to this country on my own when I was about 15,
Oh, wow.
homelessness briefly back then. Lost my son about 3 years ago, and you know what though, um, it talking about it, and that is normalizing it, and you feel your feelings, and you cry when you want to cry, you scream when you want to scream, you laugh when you want to laugh, and you say it, and I find sometimes that being able to do that, and we talked about taboos, slightly different topic a little bit ago, but I find that when I sit down with people who they want to, that there's it's on their mind, but they're afraid to say it, but they're thinking it, is to
Mhm.
help them just put it out there, give it air and
Yeah.
space, and then let it go. It feels so liberating.
Hmm.
So I applaud you for doing that. No wonder you're so good at what you do.
Yeah, I try to be very relatable, and yeah, it's a hot mess. I mean, I've gone to court wearing two different shoes before, and I have three kids, and I remember one time a client, I looked down, and the client's like, "You have a little something on your jacket," and I had a 2 year old and probably like a 3 month old, and it was probably a little something from my baby's diaper, and I was like, "Oh well, gotta run back," but that's just me, and I own it and I embrace it.
Yeah.
But you get someone who's going to advocate for you with all of my being. But I will tell everybody it is okay not to be okay every day. It is
Hmm.
okay not to be the best version of yourself every
Yeah.
day. It is okay to not be the best parent every day. Your kids just want you to be present. They don't need the best mom every day. And my kids have taught me probably more than I've taught them over the years. But it's okay not to be okay. And the more that we tell people that that's okay and that they say it and that they believe it, and to give yourself grace, because life is freaking hard.
I I love what you said. It's okay not to be okay, because I think, right, that's the crux of really what's going on. People, I think, are looking to be healed, and they're looking this forever permanent solution, whether it's going through therapy, getting on a medication or whatever. But it's really accepting,
Mhm,
not that you're dealing with stuff so much as, okay, I'll still have moments for the rest of my life where I'll lose my shit,
mhm.
and
Cry in the
I'm not.
closet.
Right. I mean, and yeah, I'll fall apart. It will never stop. And
No, it will never
declaring it
stop.
and saying, but I'm accepting it because I am loving that freaking part of myself as well. I think that's
Yeah.
that's that's that's
And
what it
and
is.
part of healing is recognizing that that will never completely go away, because that's
Yeah.
part of healing.
Yep.
It just
Yeah,
happens
because
less and less and less.
I think it makes you feel shame towards it in a way if you're trying to be like, I should be over this by now. There's a time
Right.
limit and I should move on. If you can really agree with yourself, this is what's going on, then you can get to the next step, which is what is best for me right now? What do I need in this moment? Or what will make me feel better today or progress towards a better future?
Mm. Wow, this has been amazing. We have to do this again, but I'd love for you to share some parting thoughts on whatever it is you want to share.
All right, Sam, you go first.
Well, I would just say, first of all, thank you so much for having us. But just as parting thoughts, I think what Kristen and I both really believe in is just educating and having compassion with each other. We're all human, and today Kristen and I have our hair and makeup, and we look polished, but that's just a glimpse of our life. We're human like everyone else, and we go through ups and we go through downs, and that's why we're so passionate about what we do. Is that we understand that it's not, of course, there's an attorney-client relationship, but we want to help people balance and get through to the other side with their life. So just encourage everyone to understand that, to the extent that everyone's not talking about it, hopefully they will be soon. And if anyone needs to talk to us, give us a call.
Yes, and I have two little things. One, life is short. It's too short to be unhappy. So if you're listening to this and you're unhappy and you're thinking about divorce or separation, make a call, have a consult. It is not a bad thing. It is not a bad thing. It's just the next transition of your life. It can be done with composure. It can be done in a way where there's not severe anxiety, resentment, anger. And even if there is, this too shall pass. But life is too short to be miserable and to be that unhappy. So, make a call. Don't just sit there and be miserable. And second, just like Sam said, everyone is human. And when you're hiring a professional, whether it's a dentist, a plastic surgeon, an attorney, anyone, don't just rely on reviews. Those are great. And Sam and I have many, 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 many positive reviews, and I am always so grateful and appreciative. But professionals are not a one size fits all. So I always encourage people that, when they said I was referred, to me or Sam, I'm like, call another attorney, call 2 more attorneys, feel them out, make sure that they are the right fit for you, your life, and your case. Because we're not a one size fits all. And, you may like the way that, I am so open and relatable, but you may not like my bedside manner. And so that's just, I always encourage people to have consults, but you really want people that are going to relate to you and not lie to you and be honest and transparent and be on this journey with you.
And you wrapped it up so perfectly, both of you, because I think there's a stigma about attorneys, and maybe it's something that people sort of shy away from. They don't want to reface that, that sort of you get thrown in the category. I don't want to look in the past because it was a bad experience, but a tremendous respect for what you do, because there's so many facets and pieces and layers, and there's so many roles that you play, and impacting probably the most important decisions for the rest of their lives. And then you have to sort of hold it together for yourselves as you walk in through that front door. So again, this has been really enlightening and tremendously important. And to all our listeners and viewers, make sure that you do check out the links below to learn more about the Custody Queens, how to get a hold of them. And of course, do not forget to subscribe to our Beyond the Bar podcast channel. Follow us on all social media. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.
Thank you so much,
much,
Denisa, for having Sam and I. We had a blast, and you are awesome, and keep doing what you do.
Thank you so much.